Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Guys YouTube channel where the Force is family. And welcome finally to the debut of Thursday Who? I'm, of
Thursday
course,
Who?
Thursday Who. I am, of course, Master Paul, joined for the very first time talking Doctor Who with my, I guess now former co-worker, Charlie, aka Moss Pierce. And I have to say this right off the bat. This show would not exist without this man right here, because talking Doctor Who with him at work and just comparing sort of a similar history with Doctor Who and Star Trek and Star Wars, of course, got me interested in Doctor Who. And so that's why we're here today, and why I specifically wanted to have Charlie on as my co-host for this show. So how you doing tonight, Charlie?
I'm doing good. It's a pleasure to be here. Just got back from the little family get together and stuff. Finished just in time to get here and scrabble a little scene together so that I'm not sat in the dark or whatever.
Of course, that's
And
understandable.
I'm excited to talk about some Doctor Who and the world around it.
Absolutely. So real quick, let's say hello to everyone in the chat. Hello to Phil McCracken, who of course says hashtag justice for Star Trek 5. Hashtag Cash McCracken lives. Only because of my accidents. And he also says hashtag justice for who. Hashtag Canine rules. I don't know that one. And he says Doctor Who theme music rules. Thank you, Phil, for showing up. And of course, because you mentioned Star Trek 5.
Excuse me, I'd just like to ask a question. What does God need with a starship? I said, what does God need with a starship?
Jim, what are you doing? I'm asking you a question.
Every single time I have to do it. Hello also to Leia Rose, who says David Tennant, the 10th Doctor, was my favorite Doctor Who. And Alan Copeland likes the 4th and 10th Doctor. All right, so before we get into these 4 episodes that we're going to be talking about, tell us, Charlie, what got you into Doctor Who at first?
Well, it's a bit of an interesting story. So it's back when I was in, so I did English education, if you couldn't tell by the voice. So it's ninth grade, so it would be grade 8 if I was doing the translation correctly. So back in grade 8, I was basically starting out my life in my boarding school, and I came up with a concept for a time travel show myself. And then shortly after, I decided to give Doctor Who a try. I was like, this is eerily similar to my concept. I like it. And since then, it's just been a downhill slope into Whoism.
Nice. Nice, absolutely. And then, of course, as you said, you've been talking with me about this at work, and the more we talk, the more I get interested, especially seeing these props that you have, which, for those that don't know, this is a sonic screwdriver. It's one of many different kinds, and Charlie was actually kind enough to give this one to me. For those that know your Doctor Who history, this is apparently the War Doctor's sonic screwdriver.
Yep.
And he also gave me a couple Doctor Who DVDs, one of an animated thing that... Is that canon, or is it
it was supposed to be canon, but since the actual revival in 2005, which got announced in 2003, I believe, it sort of got decanonized and basically ignored by the Russell T Davies and the New Era.
Okay. And he also gave me a DVD of the 8th Doctor, so very soon we will be getting into that. So anyways, and of course, we've complained plenty about what Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker have done with current Doctor Who. It's literally this. It's literally, like I keep saying, what Disney has been doing with Star Wars, and Kurtzman and Secret Hideout and such are doing with Star Trek. They're all cut from the same cloth, right?
Yep.
But we're gonna go back in time to the beginning of Doctor Who, back to the first Doctor, William Hurtnell, and the first 4 episodes that he played in, which are called An Unearthly Child, The Cave of Skulls, The Forest of Fear, and The Firemaker. So we're not doing blocks of 5 like what we've been doing, say, with Star Trek and the Clone Wars. We're going to go by story arcs. So some weeks we'll cover 2 episodes, some weeks we'll cover 3, some weeks we might cover as many as 6. It'll just depend on what's going on. And by the way, hello to Glenn Schroeder. Thanks for joining us. My having a little bit of technical difficulties on my end. If you could hear that, we just blipped off for a second. Everything good connection wise on your end, bud?
Yeah, all seems good.
Okay, it seems to be clearing up for me.
Okay.
But anyways, so real quick, while I share the link out to my Facebook and Twitter and all that, would you like to just almost as if it was a spoiler-free review, just give your overall thoughts on this first story arc of Doctor Who?
Okay then. So this story arc has a lot to bear up to. It's got to introduce not only new characters but an entire new show content, show type, which hasn't really been seen before when it was released back in 1963, I believe. And I believe that it did well enough to still be around today. For the actual contents, it is originally an educational show about history and science using the means of time travel to get to different locations and stories.
Okay, which definitely came as something of a shock to me when I first sat down to watch these episodes, because full disclosure, I have watched the first episode of Christopher Eccleston and the first episode of David Tennant, which are entirely different doctors than what we're getting here, where it's more of a sci-fi action show than it is educational. And of course, the doctor himself is portrayed and treated differently too, but we'll get into that here in a minute.
Yeah.
But what you said, where this started as something completely different than what it ended up, it reminds me of another conversation similar to this that we had. I'll go ahead and say this right now. Production value for these first 4 episodes is rough.
Pretty much the production value for the entire classic series is rough.
It is, yes. That is something that admittedly I did have to get used to, but at the same time, it has a certain type of charm to it. And I'm sure even though it remains rough, it does get slightly better as the show goes on, right?
Yeah. So as the show goes on, you'll A, get more acclimatized to it, and B, the production value does go up. And as technology itself within the era advances, so does it in the show.
Right. See, I've come to figure out that certain shows, either they start really, really popular and then sort of fade away as time goes on, or they start off kind of weak, but then build to something great before Chris Chibnall comes along.
Yeah.
But anyways, again, that's all really far off. So let's get into the details of these episodes, starting with An Unearthly Child. And this particular episode literally is just character introduction. That's it. So we're introduced to the 2 main characters of the show, 2 teachers actually, a history teacher named Ian Chesterton and a science teacher named Barbara Wright. And they're having a conversation with each other after school lets out for the day about this one student that is really puzzling them, a student named Susan Foreman. Basically, Susan is really, really, really excellent at history and science in some aspects, and really, really bad in others. And they show examples of this For example, one thing that she had trouble doing was solving an equation that apparently had the variables of A, B, and C. And she's like, no, you can't solve it like this. You have to have D and E also. And they're like, wait, what's D and E? And she's like, time and space. And they're like, no, that doesn't even make sense. Just do the problem as it's presented to you, which she freaks out. And then another thing that throws them off is how Susan does not want any of her teachers to visit her home. And even more strangely, her home, they look up the address and it's a junkyard. So that setup right there, that mystery that something's wrong with this girl, how well do you think that was executed?
I think is pretty well done. Because with the short example which they showed each the occupations of Ian and Barbara, and they also showed off the fact that Susan wasn't necessarily bad at history or science. She just had a different outlook on it from her experience, and then we leaves a bit of a mystery at that point because we don't know why she seems so off. All we know is that she seems as if she's different.
Yes. And so so her two teachers, Ian and Barbara, decide to follow her home one night. And they arrive at this junkyard and they look around and they just randomly find a British police box. And they hear a strange humming sound coming from inside it, but they also hear that someone's entering the junkyard, so they hide. In comes this old man, and he's wearing a funny hat. He has some form of cape on. This is the doctor, but they don't know that yet. And so they try and confront him, and he is kind of a jerk to them, being honest with you. He blows off all of their questions. He's very rude. He's like, "What are you doing here? You're trespassing on my property. I'm going to go get the policeman. They're going to call you crazy," things like that. And again, I say this having seen Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant. And Christopher Eccleston was a little bit standoffish with Rose at first, but that was nothing compared to this. Like, I'm used to the idea, just from talking to you, that the Doctor is some form of wacky hero. I didn't get that here. And
well, in the beginning, of course, they're still trying to figure out these, how the characters were going to be, how they're going to act. And William Hurtnell himself, in previous roles, usually played the type of characters of like a army general or something. So having to sort of break out of that role and into this more kinder role would have been probably a bit difficult for him, as you get used to one type of acting and you have to slowly break off into another one. And also with the context of the show, as we'll learn in the next scene, there is a sort of clear reason why he is trying to protect the police box and why he's trying to stop them from getting in.
Exactly. And before we go any further, we do need to mention one thing about William Hurtnell, and that is, going forward, some of the scenes that we're going to be describing with him are going to be a little bit off, because unfortunately the man was... How did you describe his condition to me?
So William Hartnell, especially in his later years within the show, he had a condition where the arteries within his heart were slowly sort of hardening and was causing issues with him memorizing script lines and keeping up stamina and performance. And at the beginning, it's not too bad, but as it slowly progresses throughout the show, you do start to see it more and more. Yes. And props to the supporting cast for just going along with it and making it a part of the character instead of having to stop everything and re-record it and have to use up and waste physical film.
Exactly, because one of the things that you've also mentioned to me about, especially the first Doctor, is that a lot of the episodes have gone missing. And remind me again why that is.
So back in the 1960s and 1970s, it was common practice for the BBC to go through their archived footage and video and sort of dispose of or recycle old used film which they didn't think was going to be needed again. And of course, back then they didn't have the foresight that Doctor Who was going to be as popular as it has become. Luckily, over the years, fans have found and rediscovered international releases or found home recordings of the episodes and have bought it back in that way. And also, a lot of episodes have been reimagined through being reanimated or brought back in form of a book or audio book, or in some rare cases, reproduced by the fans themselves.
Right. So essentially, I guess you could almost say like Star Trek Continues was, because a lot of people consider that effectively the unofficial final season of Star Trek the original series, even though it was not released by, the official Star Trek company, but it was done with such care, using a lot of the same techniques, that many people consider it right in there with it.
Yeah. So for the count, last time I checked, there's about 92 episodes missing from a mix of the William Hartnell era, which is the first Doctor, and the Patrick Troughton, which is the second Doctor. But then there on out, from the third Doctor forwards, we have the complete collection.
Okay. So getting back to the story, eventually Ian and Barbara realize that Susan is inside that police box, and they think that this old man, or at least as he's presenting himself, is holding her hostage. So they go inside this police box, but what they find is, number one, a room that's much bigger than the police box shows, which I believe is a pretty, consistent running thing for the TARDIS, which is what this is. And it's this weird sci-fi looking techie place. And it's revealed that there's more to this doctor and to Susan than originally thought. And they're having arguments back and forth with each other. And during these arguments, it's let slip that the doctor is from essentially another time and another civilization. And so is Susan. And during this argument, there's a bit of a scuffle where the controls get bumped and they're thrown back in time. And the episode ends with them back in the Stone Age. So like I said, this first episode, all it was character introduction. So that being said, how well do you think it introduced those characters?
I believe, other than like what you said with the rough start with William Hurtnell and the Doctor acting a little bit, on a douchey level, which is understandable because the Doctor was fully aware that that sort of technology of, spatial compression and time travel wasn't a concept within the Doctor Who universe or 1960s England at the time. So he's trying to protect them, because if they were to see it and then go out and tell people, they would be considered crazy, and he didn't want anything happening to them. And the controls weren't actually bumped, I believe they were purposely changed by the Doctor. What happened was, after they saw the inside of the TARDIS, he set a few controls on the panel, and then Ian tried to open up the doors again, but because he didn't know the controls of the TARDIS, he set it off, and the Doctor sort of purposely, set that so that, they wouldn't be able to go and tell anyone about the TARDIS and risk their safety and the safety of his grandchild.
Okay. So that brings us then into the next episode, which is called The Cave of Skulls. And so, like I said, the TARDIS gets thrown back to the Stone Age. And this episode kind of sets up, at least for this story arc, the opposition for who the Doctor and his companions are going to be facing. That being a group of cavemen that somehow know how to speak English, because they didn't know how to, I guess, make up caveman language back in 1963. But there's this one caveman, and I'm not even going to bother with the names because they were just kind of silly. So we'll say Caveman 1 wants the ability to create fire. Because apparently in this caveman society, the person that can make fire is the leader. And he said that his father was able to make fire, but his father never taught him. And so he's trying to figure it out, and the rest of the tribe is growing restless, saying, come on, make fire. You say you can do it, prove it. And he can't. Meanwhile, the Doctor and the teachers and Susan are looking around outside, and what they don't know is that they're being watched by one of the members of the caveman tribe. And this caveman sees what he thinks is the Doctor making fire with his hand. But admittedly, I didn't catch exactly what the Doctor was doing.
He was lighting a match to then light his pipe.
Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense then why the Doctor would think that he's making fire with his hands. So the Doctor is captured and brought back to the tribe, and Ian and Barbara have to go and rescue him with Susan. And they're all sort of bound up and put into this cave. And there's a whole bunch of skulls in the cave. And all of the skulls, by the way, which look completely anatomically correct. Again, 60s, shoestring budget. You work with what you got.
Paper mache skulls.
Yep. But all of the skulls are like caved in, like right here. So someone had hit them in the head, impaling them through the head, killing them. And the idea is that the leader of the caveman tribe wants the Doctor to be able to make fire for them, or else they die. Meanwhile, this caveman is sort of in a power struggle with another caveman, talking about how I don't believe you're able to make fire, and so I don't think you're a good leader, and I challenge you for your right to rule. So, all right, admittedly, I'm starting to blank a little bit on what happens next.
Okay. So what happens is we learn more about it sort of explores the sort of power dynamic between the two main people within the tribe and sort of the idea of the community that they live in. So it shows off how, fire is important to them, because with fire, you're able to keep warm during the night, and with fire, you're able also to cook food and help preserve the food to then help survive throughout the winter when there's lesser food supplies, like plants and berries and stuff. And the opposition of the Caveman 1 believes that, Caveman 2 believes that Caveman 1 isn't fit to be a leader, and believes that he should be the leader since he would be able to beat him in a duel or power battle.
Right. So with all of that being said, they eventually come up with the idea. There's also this old woman, by the way, in the tribe that's warning them not to make fire, because apparently it will bring ruination to the whole tribe, because fire, it is naturally a destructive force. So eventually the old woman decides to help the Doctor and the gang escape. And so they escape into the forest, which kind of leads into the next episode, The Forest of Fear.
Yeah.
where they're running through the woods, and meanwhile, the tribe has found out, or caveman number 2, we'll call him, has found out that the old woman lets the doctor go, and she gets killed for it. Meanwhile, the doctor and the teachers and Susan, they're running through the woods when they see that there is some animal that had just gotten killed by a larger animal. And they also hear wailing off in the distance, where I guess you could say, we'll call her the first lady of the tribe, is crying over her husband, the leader, because he just got mauled by this creature. And so the compassionate side of Barbara kicks in, and she and Ian and Susan also decides to start trying to heal him. And the doctor,
we saw this is where sort of the more darker side of the doctor comes out.
Yeah, he's like, what are you doing? They just tried to kill us. And essentially they're like, have you no sympathy for him? He needs our help.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, he actually picks up a stone, and I believe he was planning to sort of bludgeon the caveman.
Finish him off, essentially.
Yeah, finish him off and then get back to the TARDIS and leave. But the others, Ian, Barbara, and Susan, were like, I feel it is Ian who stopped him. I was like, no, don't do that. Help us save him. And so basically they rip up their clothes and sort of bandage the caveman. And of course, to the cave woman who saw this, it was sort of, magical to her, like seeing these people able to try and save and heal the other caveman, which wouldn't be seen at the time. So they all bring them back to the tribe and bring back the injured caveman back to the tribe.
Exactly. So they do that, and they agree, and basically at some point the doctor makes a deal with him. If you let us go back, I will make fire.
So what happens is Caveman 2 is trying to blame the death of Caveman 1, blame the death of the elderly woman on Caveman 1, but the doctor figures out that the stone knife used was the one that belonged to Caveman 2, and the blood was on Caveman's 2 stone knife and not on Caveman 1's, sort of showing that Caveman wasn't fit to be a leader, as he lied to the tribe.
Exactly.
And with that, they sort of get recaptured and agree to make fire for them for their release. But this leads into episode 4, the final episode,
the Firemaker, where they're captured, they're trying to make fire, and the cavemen are trying to figure out what to do between the two warring cavemen.
Yeah.
Eventually,
continue.
Eventually they are able to make fire.
Yeah.
And they show it to the cavemen, and they are, of course, all amazed. But at this point, they're like, no, you can't leave. You're from a more powerful tribe. We want you to be friends with us. We want you to become part of our tribe so that you can continue to make fire for us.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we can't do that. We have to leave.
And you get this really good line from Ian where it's like, everyone should know how to learn to make fire. In our tribe, everyone knows how to make fire, and everyone's the fire maker, which makes, everyone equal and everyone knowledgeable, and gives everyone power, so that if one person were to go down, everyone would still be able to help each other and hold each other up.
Exactly. But these cave people are too primitive to truly understand that.
Yeah.
So they're like, no, you stay with us. So the doctor and Ian and Barbara and Susan essentially have to stage another escape.
Yeah. They get locked back into the Cave of Skulls, and they are fed some meat and they're given a
Yes.
small bit of
Yes.
water.
Yes, Phil, we said fire.
And what happens is, whilst they're eating, Susan picks up a bit of wood off the fire, sort of like a torch, and puts a skull on top of it. And she realizes it almost looks, as it quotes, it almost looks alive. And then Ian sees it and is like, no, it almost looks dead.
Exactly. So what they do is they put up 4 of these skulls on these burning sticks, essentially as decoys to allow them to escape. And for a while, it works really well because the First Lady comes in and she's like, because, superstition and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But then one of the sticks topples over and they're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, they
These
tricked
guys are
us.
tricking us.
This tomfoolery, we can't allow this.
Exactly. And they say, this isn't them. This is just the bones of the dead in fire. They've escaped. We must find them. Ah!
So then we get this very anticlimactic chase scene through the forest of fear where Ian, Susan, Barbara, and the Doctor all running back to the TARDIS. But I don't remember, are there cavemen chasing them?
Yes, and in fact, all the cavemen have torches.
Mm-hmm. So they're all chasing them in a sort of Simpson-style pitchfork, well, not pitchfork, but torches chasing them through the woods. And then at the very end of the episode, the 4 of them finally get into the TARDIS and slip in before the cavemen are able to do any damage to them.
Exactly. However, they don't go back to Earth 1963. In fact, Ian and Barbara are like seriously bugging the Doctor, are you taking us back? Are you taking us back? But they don't, but the episode ends with them not on Earth. Instead, they're on this planet where everything looks dead. All that's left is a few bare trees. And as they leave to explore, the Geiger counter on the TARDIS starts spiking up really, really high into the danger level.
Yeah, after they checked it and left, so they don't realize that they've walked into a dangerous high radiation area.
Exactly. And that's how the episode ends.
Yeah.
So that is pretty much all of the first episode of Doctor Who, and we actually went through that kind of quick.
Yeah.
But then again, this is the first episode.
The first story of the Doctor.
It's all introductions.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not much meat to get into yet, but I'm sure that there will be going forward.
As it goes, I'm pretty sure the next story itself has a lot more substance and introduces one of the most iconic villain within Doctor Who.
The Daleks.
The Daleks. Exterminate.
Exactly. Yes. So, talking about these 4 episodes as a first impression for Doctor Who, as I said, it certainly caught me off guard that the Doctor would be anything that wasn't the wacky hero that we're accustomed to, of course, thanks to David Tennant and Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi. But the idea that the Doctor's just at first a jerk came across as kind of strange to me.
Yeah. So I believe within these first episodes, this is the first time the Doctor has done something sort of like this. So it's sort of alluded that before this, he's just been traveling and observing, and it wasn't until Susan decided to try and stay in one place that they decided to settle down in 1960s England. So then when Ian and Barbara get, thrust into this situation, and they go to the the caveman era, the Stone Age, the Doctor sort of isn't used to having this activity. He's not used to. He's in a new environment. He at this point he isn't a known adventurer. At this point he's still only just starting. So I think he doesn't fully find within the lore of the show at least, he doesn't find his compassionate side until after Ian, or until he gets to know Ian and Barbara more.
Right. So yeah, as a first impression, it was a little bit off-putting, but it still held my interest enough to want to keep watching. So I am absolutely looking forward to seeing more. And of course, we've talked a lot, especially at work, about what happens to, say, Susan, why she's not mentioned in any Doctor Who thing really after the first Doctor, and how her story ends will be interesting to see also.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. This was somewhat of a shorter stream. In fact, I think this was not on purpose, by the way. There's really just, this is the
first.
I
can ask you a few questions to plump it out a bit more if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay, so you've already mentioned sort of what your thoughts on it, how you found it a bit jarring, but what highlights did you get from the episode? What was the good things that you saw on it?
Okay, yeah, I can do that. What good things? How the Doctor, aside from being a jerk, how he was introduced, how he tried to play it off as if he was just a normal old man, but then how that facade is broken when the TARDIS interior is revealed for the first time.
That leads on to my next question. What was your thought on the TARDIS interior? Like the first time seeing the TARDIS, what was your first impressions and what was your thought?
I expected there to be a little bit more in there, but at the same time, I know 1963, this was the first time we ever saw something like this. They were still working with it.
Well, one thing that sort of probably to do with the budgeting issue, to save on prop design and set design, quite a lot of the props and sets from the classic era seem very, well, not sets, but for the TARDIS and the sonic screwdrivers, they seem very similar. There is slight updates. So in the beginning, you have a lot of sort of knobs and switches, and then as it goes into the more modern era, you've got more screens and buttons and lights. And you sort of see that with the sonic screwdrivers. Pardon?
And crystals.
That's not until Jodie Whittaker.
I know.
But like, so for an example, the sonic screwdrivers. If you can hold up the War Masters quickly. Yeah. So we got the third Doctors here, the fourth/fifth Doctors here, and then the War Masters. And if you actually look closely at the design of them, they all have the same body. The heads on the fifth on them are slightly different. This one has more of a flat back. This one points out more. So they kept the prop designs very similar and the set design for the TARDIS similar, just updating it to fit more in with the era. There is some slight alteration, but the more iconic set designs and prop designs don't really come around until Paul McGann with the 8th Doctor, unfortunately.
Which, again, as you said, was released exclusively. Well, I wouldn't say exclusively. It was released with the intention of crossing Doctor Who over into the American audience.
Yeah. So it's produced and sort of mainly targeted for American audiences to try and kickstart the show in America with a new Doctor and series. Unfortunately, they didn't get the viewership that they wanted, so it didn't continue beyond the one movie. But luckily, Paul McGann did get to continue his role as the Doctor within the Big Finish audiobooks, which is a officially licensed series of audiobooks / audio plays, which include quite a lot of the original cast from the show.
And he also did that one special where they show him regenerating into the War Doctor.
Yes, for the 50th anniversary, they did bring him back to show his regeneration into the War Doctor, which is, I believe, a great sort of nod to not only just the Big Finish audiobooks, but also great to bring back Paul McGann again.
Oh, hold on. You just got kicked for some reason.
I'm still here for me.
Okay, well, you're coming through clearer now. Your picture was looking a little fuzzy before.
Probably a bit of a Wi-Fi glitch then.
Okay. But yeah, like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see how this series evolves as it goes forward. I'm especially looking forward to, well, I almost want to say I'm looking forward to most getting into the most iconic Doctors, that being David Tennant and Matt Smith. Yeah. But I know that we got a long way to go before we get to those.
We got about 27 seasons and a movie to get through before we get there. But to get the full impact of the New Who era, and especially the Jodie Whittaker era, you have to go through the Classic Who to... You have to go through Classic Who to get the full intent on why Chris Chibnall has ruined the show or tainted the show so much.
Yes.
Is there any questions from the chat?
There is not really, actually.
Well, here, a quick invitation. If you're in the chat and you have any questions, feel free to throw something in quickly.
Absolutely.
Either directed for me or for Master Paul.
Yeah. So let's see. What else can we talk about Doctor Who related that's not spoiling what's coming up?
We could talk about the new Doctor announcement.
Okay.
Ncuti Gatwa.
Yeah, this is something that mostly you'll be able to comment about because, like I said, I am not anywhere close to knowledgeable enough to comment on it. So, just what do you think of him?
I believe unfortunately I haven't seen any of his work, but from the small amount of interviews and sort of fan edits and clips I've seen of him, I believe that he's going to do a really good job as the Doctor. He seems to be passionate about the show itself. He seems to be a fan of the show. And he seems to have a grasp of how important the show is to the fans and to the people that watch it, which is the fans.
Of course.
Yeah, which is important for any role you play, to be honest.
It absolutely is.
I believe Russell T. Davies is producing this new season 14, in October and beyond. And he was able to revive the show in 2005. Fingers crossed, I believe that he is able to do it again. We just got to hope that Chris Chibnall doesn't put a stamp on the show in the centenary episode in October.
AKA solidifying the idea of the timeless child.
Yes, but we'll get to that when it's time. As the Doctor says, we'll take the long way round.
Oh yes, that's going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, Phil says #justice. He says again #justice for Canine. Is Canine a reference to Doctor Who?
Yes. So there is a sort of companion. It's a little robot dog from the Tom Baker era of Doctor Who, and also seen in New Who and the Sarah Jane Adventures, which was basically, it's a dog which is able to give knowledge and information, and is supposed to catch on to the craze at the time of, the cute robot companions, which I believe it did somewhat successfully.
Okay. hold on. Phil McCracken says, I will not watch Doctor Who until Jodie Doctor and that whole season is retconned, and I am not going to trust BBC/Doctor Who unless there's major changes. Well, depending on whether or not you listen to our friend Overlord DVD, who I might be appearing back on his channel very soon. He put out a video recently saying essentially that they are going to retcon the idea of the timeless child. Now, the Jodie Whittaker season, by this theory, which rumor, I have to specify this. This is a rumor. The rumor is essentially that the Jodie Whittaker season does happen in canon, but the Master, who, as of right now, I don't know who that is, essentially explains to the Doctor after they regenerate that the whole story of the timeless child was a lie.
Yes. And at the moment, that is what I am hoping will happen in the 14th season. Unfortunately, I do have a theory and inkling that in this centenary episode, they will put a stamp on it, because we see Victor, who his partner Belle has a child that we see in Flux. And what I'm theorizing, and I'm worried, I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but I'm worried that that child that is seen is going to be revealed to be the timeless child, which will put a stamp on that and make it a lot harder to fix that arc.
Essentially, to put it in layman's terms, spoiler alert, the timeless child is the Doctor.
Yeah. For any fans of Doctor Who have seen that era or seen news of it, that's not surprising. But saying that doesn't give it away too much, because if you haven't seen that era, you probably don't know what the timeless child is. So that probably doesn't worry anyone too much.
Right.
And we'll leave on that note to not ruin anyone's day.
Fair enough. And I think that's a good note also to go ahead and end this stream on. So, like I said, this was a little bit shorter of a stream than usual, but at the same time, this is the first of Thursday Who, and yes, I am going to say it like that. There's a question mark in that. But yeah, I mean, just like Doctor Who had somewhat of a humble beginnings, so does this. So, anything you want to say before we get out of here, bud?
Thank you for having me on here. I'm looking forward to future adventures together within this expansive galaxy and universe. And if anything happens, don't forget to assemble a cabinet at them.
Absolutely. I mean, I already have the first of my collection, and I told you the next one I'm going to get is Matt Smith's, because that's the most iconic one, which you have. Star Wars, Phil McCracken says, will Cindy Who be coming for a visit? You mean Cindy Lou Who from The Grinch?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think that's an entirely different universe. But anyways, guys, I think after this, we're going to start a gaming stream, which, Charlie, if you're up for it, you're welcome to pop over there. And it's going to be, drum roll, please, Skyrim. Just for Phil. But anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. And guess what our tagline for this show is going to be? You know something, Charlie? You were fantastic.
And you know what? So was I.
So was I. Which, by the way, is the last thing that Christopher Eccleston says. And that's what we're going to sign this channel off with. And just remember, everyone, the Force is family. See you.